Welcome to Mattia and Xiao's presentation. We wanted to gather everyone here because the presentation is happening inside, and we want to go inside all together. So basically, you'll have around 5 minutes to wander around and see what's in the room, and then Xiao will take it from there. That's all you need to know for now. So join us. Come.
You find it kind of hard reading and to understand the letter. It's not a problem because there's nothing prepared.
Dearest Pieter, the mountain reshapes itself each dawn. Today, its ridges curve like the spine of a man turning in sleep, a geometry my father would have called blasphemous, as though God himself had forgotten to be stern. But here, Pieter, divinity wears no single face. The villagers say Nyadnapap is both cradle and crypt. Her roots cradle fallen skyships from an age before northern cities scraped the horizon, while her hair, long as monsoon rains, weaves the valleys into fertile glyphs. They speak of her love as the soil loves the seed, indiscriminate and nourishing. No one here finds that strange. Since the fever, my body has become an anchor, sinking into the earth as if Nyadnapap itself were pulling me into its roots. For days I drifted, breath thick as sap, between delirium and stillness. It was then the mountain began to whisper, not in words but in the slow, patient language of stones. A child, Sari, left a nutshell by my pillow. A spider slept inside, she later told me, to spin away the heat. I noticed it only when the pain loosened its grip, my limbs still leaden, my mind adrift. The shell had been split and resealed, its seams faintly aglow. Inside, a sliver of light pulsed like a spider's legs knitting air into silk. I watched it for hours, days, or perhaps moments, as the room swayed between shadow and the cool blue haze of dreams. When the fever broke, I found Sari humming at my bedside, her small hands grinding herbs into paste. She pressed a poultice to my chest and said, "The mountain heals what your land called broken." A child's simplicity, perhaps, or a truth too vast for northern libraries. You still curate their archives, don't you? Dusting relics of civilized conquests, deaf to the hum in the walls, that low, persistent thrum even mortar cannot muffle. The nutshell glows brighter now. I've begun to think it's a tiny echo of Nyadnapap's heart. A heart that beats in rhythms your cosmologian would deem arrhythmia. Do you recall the night we walked the dunes near Cuttack? How the stars seemed to rearrange themselves as we spoke? You laughed and called it illusion. But here, the constellations do shift. Last night I watched Orion loosen his belt, his rigid posture slackening into a curve that mirrored the crater's rim. Even the heavens, it seems, are permitted to bend. In one dream, I climbed Nyadnapap's slopes beneath a sky bruised purple, the air thin and electric. Something followed, not a shadow, but the absence of light, a void that peeled back layers of stone to reveal roots braided with iridescent alloy. The villagers call these roots shipbone, but I've seen them pulse. At the summit, where the stars press close enough to taste, they passed me. Silent vessels gliding upward, not herons but shards of mirrored glass, dissolving into constellations. Below, the earth unraveled into mist, leaving me suspended, weightless. I had hoped for answers at the summit. Instead, the void yawned, indifferent. Another night, I dreamed of threads, luminous filaments binding stars to ferns, rivers to my own thrumming veins. When I reached to touch one, my fingers blurred into the glow. I was no longer painting landscapes, Pieter. I was unweaving them, tugging at seams to glimpse the tapestry beneath. Each brushstroke now is a tremor in the web, a stitch in space-time's skin. The villagers say fever opens a door. Some return with shadows in their eyes. Others never return at all. Sari brings me bitter tea each dawn, her gaze lingering on the nutshell. She knows. They all do. They move through the mist like ghosts, murmuring of spirits and those who become bridges between worlds. In waking hours, I learned to paint the landscape in their way. Text and image woven into fractal syntax, time rendered as quantum-layered interference patterns. The sky in my latest work is neither blue nor grey, but a depthless poem of non-Euclidean grammar, where reading a sentence erases the horizon and tracing a cloud unravels the text. To perceive it, you must unlearn sight and syntax. Let the mind become a moth in a hall of mirrors, as futile as measuring starlight, with a spectrometer set to silence. The villagers call it weaving. I call it vertigo. The mountain laughs at our northern fetish for singular truths. Here even time is a braid. The nutshell still glimmers. Some nights, I press it to my ear and hear a sound like distant waves, or maybe that of something weaving. I think of your hands steady and sure, grounding me in the scent of linseed and turpentine. But here, even memory feels porous. When I close my eyes, I see the ships ascending, the threads trembling, and I wonder, am I painting the dream? Or is the dream painting me? Write to me simple things, Pieter. Tell me the sea still licks the shore with its salt-grey tongue, of the cobblestones outside your window, the weight of your coat in the winter rain. Anchor me, however faintly, to the world we once shared. Yours, in the quiet of becoming, Willem.
And then if you want, I think you can feel free to look at art for another couple of minutes, and then we will start to give an introduction about the whole project and our personal process of making the works. No. When did you when Okay. Yeah.
scan it, then vectorialize
Yeah,
it, and then
printed them, I ordered them.
everything is here. Now we talk a bit about the process, the work, and the
I like this rather than those sort of moving images.
Usually I would
Like,
like
I
it
mean,
too, but
it's
this time
I thought even
Yeah, first of all, thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. And we want to tell you a bit about the history of the genesis of this project. 2 weeks ago, more or less, me and Xiao were thinking about what to do in our 30-minute presentation. And we were in the garden smoking and talk about it. And suddenly we find ourselves a bit lost because a lot of things happens in these 3.5 months here. A lot of inputs, a lot of people, and a lot of thoughts, process of working, etc. And we both find ourselves a bit lost, let's say again. So we were thinking about doing something together to avoid this like sense of loss. And we start to think about something that can connect each other in a way. And we start to think about a fictional story that involves some of my thoughts that previously I was thinking about the presentation and some of the thoughts of Xiao and his works also.
Yeah, so I have to admit that doing this collaborative project together, it really comes from a sense of crisis, because I was deeply in crisis. I was really unhappy with all the work that I've done so far in the residency, and I simply understood that none of us wanted to show the work that we made so far. So starting as sort of a joke, but then become slowly become more real, that we decided to do a collaborative project together. And then I think we had a bit hard time to find a connection point together, but we really kind of tried to have deep conversation into each other's practice. And then we start realize, okay, these elements of question, doubts, and the fictional thinking might be a good start. So and that's how we start actually to have this the draft of this collaborative exhibition project coming together. And then
yeah, it's also good to thanks people who talk with us, like Miriam and Hussein. They helps us a lot also to elaborate all our thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. And then we started. I started to write this letter, this fictional letter. With help of DeepSeek and ChatGPT, I started to explore this fictional writing process that is completely unfamiliar for me. And we got this piece done, and then starting from that, sort of as a loose starting points, we start to create all the work that is that you see here in this exhibition.
Yeah, in the letter, the content of the letter, it's of course poetical, and it's about a lot of themes that we connect together before the generation process. And then the letter you have in your hand is handwritten by my father. Maybe you want to explain why?
Yeah, because after we got this, we have this letter in hand, and we wanted to present as a piece, and then it came to my mind that the Danish artist Danfo actually has exhibited this serious work where he just commissioned his father to do this like amazing handwritten historic documents. And then while I was telling this idea to Mattia, and he just told me, my father is also calligraphy. It was like perfect. Then let's do it.
Yeah, it happens like that.
Yeah. I think now I will try to give short presentation of my own work and process. And so what you see here, it's everything that is not on the window. They're my work. Previously, my practice was academically driven, choosing topics, exploring text, historic references, and semiotics. This process was clear-cut, first research, then visually present the findings. But over time, this method felt limiting. The artwork somehow became mere illustration of theory and research process. And aesthetic of sort of research-based exhibition often leave the viewers overloaded with information and confused. So for me, it felt like continuing also the continuation or contribution to a Western tradition of intellectualism that treats knowledge as something to extract and to clarify and to display it. Then I started to question, could a creative process itself become a form of knowledge generation and body knowledge independent of traditional research and textual references? Can something that I can learn that's directly from the process of making painting rather than go to study through the books and text and then later make a painting about it? So here at Jan van Eyck, I initially planned to do a career research on Dutch colonial landscapes, but soon I ran into difficulties where refusing to engage with old familiar working methods, engaging in speculative imagination without careful historic grounding seemed also a bit pragmatic and inadequate for handling the sensitive of this particular history, which me as a Chinese artist don't clearly fits either as a colonizer or colonized. So turning to science fiction offered a fresh path. I inspired by Ursula Le Guin, who sees science fiction as metaphor for understanding the present rather than predicting the future, and Yu Kui, a Chinese philosopher, who emphasizes technology's deep connections to cultural cosmologies. I embrace speculative fiction as a working method. So science fiction's imaginative metaphors, alternative biologies, fluid timelines, and crash between diverse cosmologies enabled me to explore colonial legacy without assuming a historian's role. And this also allowed me to look at different cultural colonialisms without situating them into a specific past or geology, rather than as a set of conceptions and practices that can be and are reiterated over time and potentially over the distant future. So the works that you see here are purely experimental, reflecting my current uncertainties and struggles. Rather than directly educating viewers about specific history, colonial history, they propose speculative gestures and liminal oscillations, like in the latter, a mountain serving simultaneously as a tomb for starships, but also create for divinity or fever that is both a disease and a portal. They invite us to reconsider our present understanding of the past by preserving its inherent opacity. And I think now you can...
I just came in my mind that I want also to, before starting my part, thanks also Romy and Ron and Pavo for the help of doing this, because it's very, it was a rush. We did it in 2 weeks, so yeah. And starting from that letter that Xiao write, I was thinking about this idea of a journey, and this idea leads me to think about the journey we are all doing here in Jan van Eyck. And so I start to think about the letter as a starting point to reflect on all the things that comes up in these months here. And during my stay here, I did a lot of reading and research, and especially a lot of drawings about all these things I was reading and researching, and also about conversation I had with most of you, and also during the studio visits. And was nice for me to compare a lot of different thoughts, a lot of coexistence of different worlds. So I take this like a starting point for do this piece. And inside the work you will find, of course, scenes from the letters. And now Xiao is distributing a piece of paper where you can find like suggestion for all the drawings you see here. So inside the piece you can find scenes from the letter that I translate in drawings, but also like questions, doubts, reflections, and possibilities that was coming up during my stay here. And the idea of the piece was born from maybe a month ago. I was working with Margaret in the printing lab, whom I thanks, of course. And there's this film prepared for the screen prints that is black. And when I printed it, then I bring it to the studio and I accidentally hang it on the window. And I see this like very good effect of the light coming in, and in a way that transform in light, and I like it very much. So I was also thinking about the idea of the windows, because here in the Netherlands, one of the first thing I noticed when I was arriving is that there is a lot of windows here, like not only in the Jan van Eyck, but also in the streets. So yeah, I took this like a nice metaphor to reflect on the relationship between the in and the out, the inner and the others. So I would like to, producing this also to see if drawing can be like position in this kind of threshold that is between inside and outside. And these months for me were very confusing and also amazing. And I want to thank all of you to being here, and I feel very lucky and privileged to be here. So thank you. Maybe we can have other 5-10 minutes to read the paper, and then we can open to Q&A. Thank you. There's no specific way, no. Maybe while you read, we can also tell you a little bit about this work that we make together. And just a 4 hands work we did. And it's about how do you call it? It's a belief that for treating the fever You must catch a spider and put it in a nutshell and then close the nutshell and carry with you for 24 hours and you will be like healed.
Yeah, so we made this work together. You will see there's spider, silver spider inside this nutshell, and spider actually is from Mattia's older work. And then I made with Ron's help, I made the glass box, and then glass on glass. We thought this is a very important piece because it's not just physically bring two of our works together, but also ideally, conceptually, it's like how this idea of the way of looking and try to find the right corner to see the things, and then we really enjoy the moment that when you try to understand what exactly is there, and then through the reflection of the mirror, and this tiny little bit object start to spinning because it has like a lot of reflections, and then I think somehow this also calls back what in the letter it was talking about, the vertigo.
Okay, we can start the questions. Q&A moment. If you need more time, I don't know, it's okay, no? Yes, I barely lost my shoulder for this.
So guys, for documentation purposes that everyone is audible, we are using this non-amplified microphone.
I don't have anything else to say.
Come on. So you know where, I can go to you if you...
A lot of questions.
I think it's nice that you see image and then you don't need I like that you see images and then you don't need so much words, I think. Just you have a lot to look. So that's nice, really nice.
Thanks. There's also a lot of text to read somehow.
So the images on the wall, on the window, sorry, they look illustrative. Would you call them illustrations? Because also with given this, they kind of refer to kind of some type of illustrative thing. But would you refer to them yourself as illustrations, this way of working? Or can you talk more about how you work with some of these ideas and bring them into images, particularly to Mattia?
Yeah, I don't consider it proper illustrations, but at the same time, most of the image of the single subjects as like it's connected to a meaning or a story, but it's not literal, so it's not connected to a text, for example. the text I did it like today, just to because I was thinking about explaining a bit all of themes I was working on, but then with the text it's more easier, and yeah, we don't take a lot of time, so.
You wrote what was today?
Yeah. Yeah, all these notes were already like taken in my notebook, but yeah, I organize it like this today. But there are, yeah, more than illustration is drawing related to some kind of thoughts and facts. For example, the one behind you, is related to the studio visit I did with Dan Lee, and they was telling me this story about two friends of them who were together, and they were friends of both, and then the couple break up, and we were talking about truth, what is truth. And they tell me, yeah, these two friends of mine break up, and then every one of them told me a different story about the relationship. So what is truth? Yeah, this is about, so it's not illustrative, but it's, you can see that there is the two couple on the top, the two people like splitting, and then the one that have one in mind talking to Dan Lee, and then the other that have the other in mind talking to Dan Lee again. So yeah, I don't know. What do you think about it? It's illustration.
I think it's just because they were presented here with the text next to it. Also, I just wanted to ask a question because I felt awkward because no one was saying anything. No, I thought but now it makes more sense when you say the text comes afterwards. It's almost like the text is illustrating or a subtext to the image. It's like I wanted you to talk more about your process. So it seems that a story comes, and then an image comes, and then you've just applied these texts from your notebook, like kind of as a composition later on, which that's kind of the relationship that I was asking about. I don't think that they are illustrations, but I was wondering what this relationship. Some of them are very obvious, like the one where you just explained. It kind of says here, but other of them, it's like not. It's not directly referential, so it's kind of more instinctive, I guess, the way that you've kind of put them together. But then the text coming afterwards kind of, yeah, makes sense.
Actually, they are a bit referential for every piece, but yeah, maybe this text doesn't explain so much. So yeah, we can talk about it. There's a meaning for everything, more or less.
But actually, that question was interesting for me because I started thinking about both of your practices and also like what you're looking into now, the diorama, and also the way that, this is just maybe as a parenthesis, the way that you work with the windows and these little sections into these universe refer very well to the diorama. But I think also the relation between what is depicted by the diorama and what is narrated about the diorama. So that relation to text is inherent in there. And with Xiao's work, and maybe the selection of works here are not the most representative of the relation that you have between image and texts and how you have dealt with that through your practice, no? And I think also the crises that come from that relation. And I think experimenting with this fictional letter and with the audio and, with this other type of juxtaposition between narrative and image making, I thought it was quite interesting knowing your previous work. This is not a question, it's just something that arose from your comment, and it wasn't that evident for me before, but maybe something to think through is also how you see each other's way of working with texts and how that can indirectly inform your practice. But I think this is very meta at this point, so I'd rather just give the floor to another question. If
Thank you.
Hey, congratulations, it's very beautiful, the space. I want to ask you about materiality, how you choose the materialities that you choose for the sculpture and the paper, which are the decision behind that type of materialities.
For me, the materiality, I think it's one of the most important thing I think about the painting, and like why still make painting today, and somehow I come to see like personal thinking that painting is somehow the only medium that binds the way of thinking image and the making bodily working with materiality to come together. And here, I think, because I said it's like very experimental, so I'm just trying to work with new material that I'm not familiar with. For example, the aluminum sheet and this paper and the screen prints. I don't know, I think I haven't actually thought about very much. I think if I was in my previous exhibitions, I would be pretty clear with have already answered to why I choose this material and what it's a fascinating thing, interesting thing about it to me and why it's here in this exhibition. But I think for this time, I really do not think of that much. I would just really rather try to think how can I, by choosing this material and in the process of working it would come out something. And I think also the plaster that you see here, it's like really kind of casual decision because Mattia is going to use this like plastinine, and I was thinking, okay, maybe I should also apply to it. And now I think it's the first time I actually have time to sitting here behind this and look at it, and I don't know, what it means, but I think slowly it will come out.
So in my case, I've got this idea of covering all the windows, and then I choose the materials to do it in the more fast, economic and sustainable way, and also to remove it easily, reuse it again. So the things involved are not so much the plastic foils, the ink on it. Underneath there is soap and water that sticks the foils on the windows, and then the plasticine around. It's there to not not make the water evaporate. So that's very physical, basically. And then there's the light, of course, that it's something, that's everywhere. That's why how I choose it, and also because of the story I was telling you. I did screen print here a lot, and I saw this that is left over for the screen print, and I decided to use this like the piece.
Sure. Congratulations to both of you. This is an enormous amount of work, and it's also really inspiring to see the both of you come together collaboratively to really put together an exhibition, but also to think conceptually as to what connects your practices. I think it's really beautiful to see. Xiao, I'm really curious as to how you feel after having approached your creative practice in a very different way. So you were talking about the kind of almost limitations from going from research to then visualizing research. And I would like to hear you talk a little bit more about what you think are the risks associated with that approach, which pushed you to try something new and approach science fiction and speculation. And I know it's very soon because you've been spending 2 weeks making this work, but what are your reflections now on this idea of embodied knowledge that can only be kind of accessed through the act of creation? And what do you think you've learned from the materiality, from the choices you've made, from the collaboration that you wouldn't have been able to get to had you gone through your typical process of research first?
Thank you very much. Well, because you always make amazing questions. But I think for me, I still haven't had much time to actually think through it, so I think I'm not able to give a very structured answer on that, because I think in the past 2 weeks my mind's just about the production itself. But to some extent, some fragments in my process working, for example, thanks to Romy and Magid, I start to explore a lot of the screen prints and try to use screen prints in my work, and also the use of pigment to put in. And although I'm a painter, that I make my own paint, so I'm kind of familiar with pigment. But it's the first time that I use pigment raw, dry, and it's kind of unfamiliar for me, like a dry pigment and stay there. The color shines differently. I think this is something new for me, because also when I was trying to write this science fiction, still somehow try to connect to the research of colonial landscape. I think through this new lens, there is something that is sparkling, but it's something that I cannot explain. And somehow when I was working with this cobalt blue, that just happened because Magri, she has it. So she's like, you go to use it. And then there's no research and concrete thought behind. But I think there's something that guides me to it, and this is for me really unfamiliar, because before I would say, okay, why exactly I use this pigment, and what is the historic context, and what is discourse I try to make into it. But thanks to a lot of conversation I had with participants here, and also especially with media, we talk about this idea of the right of opacity, and also this Western intellectual tradition of trying to really clarify the knowledges as something that can be clarified and can be transmitted clearly and exhibited. I think this is something that I really try to start to see the difference, and the work also try to work against. Yeah, I don't know if that's kind of answer, but thanks.
I really like the fact that this work is sort of site-specific, because you use the window here to sort of project your work. And I found it personally disconnected with the text that you are written here, because you're asking yourself a lot of questions. It feels like there's so many questions that match to the drawings that you have on the window. So my mind is going crazy when you ask this question. I was like, wow. And there's also very philosophical questions. So I was really wondering, like for me, I see immediately that the visuals speak for itself to me, and I see there's a movement. I see there's personality in it, and I can feel there's sort of a character inside that you're creating, sort of maybe subconsciously or consciously, that there are characters created, and there are situations created through all different kind of stories as well. And I just see actually the movement and also the lights, because you make it, most of them, dark. So the visuals are very present, and the lights coming through from the backside a little bit. I was wondering, what if there would be a performance with the different, let's say, highlights on different parts, and with first starting with totally dark here, and with spotlight somewhere and music, something like that. It could be a visual artwork and same time sort of like performance. And I think for me, it would get me very intrigued, because when I first get into it, I was like, oh, where do I start? It is amazing. It's a lot of stories. And when I'm first introduced, maybe from a small part into the big part, and then maybe another part, then there's like sort of storyline created, and I feel there's a very big potential of the storyline here. But maybe that's not how you work.
Well, thank you. Yes, I didn't have so many time to think about the relationship between images and text in this sense. I was writing it just because I feel the fear of not be understood in a way, but I don't know if it's something really important or not. I like the things you said, that the work speaks for itself, and it's good. Thank you so much. And I will think about the performance. Yes, thank you.
Cool.
I can connect to that. I don't know if it's a question, but more like a reflection. Also, how you structured the whole situation was for me already like the dramaturgy of us coming in, and also how you decided to when to play back the letter, the recording, when to give out the papers, and also give us like time indications to look at. But so that was already for me like had like this event character, like and then also like the work itself, is almost like scenes, small like scenes, and I had this sense of being very like involved as a spectator. I say no spectator. Also, I thought a lot walking in. I thought about churches, the church as the origin of like the theater, then finding like these little scenes, and almost like after the letter, like I felt like, oh, we need to solve a riddle or something. We are invited to almost like a escape room situation or something like this. And then also funnily, like Alessandro was like, let's start the movement class here. And I felt like it could happen because it was such a scenery of little indications of the past and the present and the nutshell, and like so yeah, to kind of like almost like the relics of like a person who has lived here in this room, or so yeah, maybe I don't know if it's a question, but maybe it's like more like a rhetoric question of like, could you think about enhancing the performativity of both of your works? Yeah.
I really want to thank Bruno for helping to set up this dramology of the exhibition. I think because for me personally, I've been mostly thinking about the production of the works, and maybe exhibition as something that is very static experience, just setting in the work. But then by having studio visit, talking with Bruno, slowly comes out to think about the from perspective, spectator's perspective, like how many minutes people should look at it, and whether this is exhibition or it's actually a presentation, because in the presentation we have the power to dictate, to tell you what to do, whereas I think it's kind of precious occasions that an exhibition usually does not happen. And then I think just go back to this tiny little scene that you sort of a riddle you talk about, because I think at the beginning I was thinking about to work in a more historic, speculative fiction narration way, and then therefore there are some works was meant to act as part of the direct object from that moment. So like the letter was a letter written by Willem, and the poetry was Willem or Pieter's poetry, or then you have like Willem's notebook, so they're like that. But then I think slowly it evolved, because I realized I don't want to make it sort of as a puzzle to, you know, when you put everything together, there's something to be revealed. So I think there's also sort of becoming, but I definitely see that, and yeah, it's beautiful.
Maybe it's not even like, maybe it's even more than performative. Maybe it's also this immersive environment which I found myself in, and I was curious how this could look like, even like if you would extend this sensation I had. Yeah.
Maybe as a note to what you said, there's something inherent in some of your works which is not visible, but it's felt. And it's performative in itself, which is the weight. So you didn't pass around that little notebook, but the weight of the painting is not the weight of the painting, it's the weight that Xiao gives as a surplus to the object. So I think it relates quite well, even if it's not performed as a prop. There's something inherent in the work that is unlocked while someone is actually holding it. So.
Yeah, maybe I just give a bit further explanation. Talking about the way it's actually that painting that you say in the end of the room is not strictly a part of this narration, because that's part of the old works that I create here in Yavanek. And I started making that kind of work because I realized that there's something in the text painting that I make that is, when you look at the text, you cannot see it as an image because you have to follow the linear sense of the text. And you look at image, then the text will not make sense to you. So there's like a back and forth into this kind of text painting that I make. And then meanwhile, also the book painting, the canvas that has the shape of the book and also the weight of book is also something that you have to decide whether perceive it as book, as an object, or as an image. And they are actually belongs together, because I was thinking, is there a way for me to activate this oscillation, telling audience what to do? Even furthermore, therefore, I started work in a fictional way. But then when people decide to read the text, there's instruction to tell them, actually, you can pick up, not strictly this book here, but you can pick up the book and feel in the hand. When you flip, there's another image that brings you back to the text. So I think it's totally felt this kind of trying to push the work more as prompt and to interact more, yeah.
I have some. I would like to ask question from Xiao. But because I think it's very nice to see you two work together, and especially for Mattia work. How to say, because Xiao proposed many idea about like the idea of cosmology or different way that how we see history, and also question about this. And I feel it's quite interesting that I see Mattia use those concepts, but you give your very personal feedback from your personal experience, memory, and you collect the experience when you were in young bike. I think this part is quite interesting. It's not from the big like theory or concept, from your personal position. And I think I would like to how you think about it, because I think it's also quite interesting that you two work together this time, so it creates quite different atmosphere like your previous practice. I guess you also notice some part about like this, like a personal position to deal with those concepts, and maybe I guess you found something here.
Yeah, definitely. I think at first it did not seem to be so obvious for both of us that there's something commonly shared in our work. So I think we also had a struggle, and talking with some other participants with their help, like Media and like Hussein, and we try to find out something. But then I think at some point when we started, when we have the first draft and then we started going more and more, it's something slowly coming out, and it's not that clear. But I think in this moment I definitely felt, and especially when the works are installed and in the same space, I think the resemblance between the works is not just the material that we use plus Ninan's and also the theme subject, or it's not even because we kind of loosely start from this letter, but I think there's something more profound in the thinking about the question of doubts and cosmologies. Yeah, I think this is, yeah, definitely.
I think there's also like a sharing of the same struggle again, to do a presentation here, to do it good or properly, and to question ourselves also about what art is, what we are doing here. So probably this was kind of a way for us to access to this like common point. Yeah?
But also, I think for me, I was always talking about the previous works that I used to make, this kind of research-based exhibitions. I think by doing this kind of new work, I'm really become much more vulnerable, because when you ask me questions about the works, I find myself unable to explain, to talk about them, which is kind of unusual for me, because I'm always, used to go back with all the references and everything. And then you talk about like this personal approach of your ideas, and this is something I think really kind of distance in a way from the way that I work, but I definitely see coming together. I don't know, because it's kind of like in the Chinese concept, even two most distant points, they are also the most closest points. I think this is kind of idea, because the presence and absence, they're always connected. And I think in working this way, I kind of felt like me, I have to borrow somebody else's voice and the mouth to talk about something that I think about, while I think Mattia directly writes down what happened in his studio and the words and the questions he thinks about. And so it's like really far away, but somehow I think it's connected.
Yeah, I just want to add that, yeah, it's personal, but it's also in a way constructed with all the people I've met, and with this space particularly. So it's not only me. I mean, I have this lens to see the work, but then it's full of also others and big theories that I didn't write, of course. So yeah.
Until when is it on view? Until when is it on view?
Tomorrow.
So guys, you don't have much time. You need to make the best out of it. Any final burning questions? Or everyone's ready for dinner? All right, dinner.
To the end, I really want to thank everybody who helped me, like Pavel helped us to install, Alessandro, Miriam, Hussein, and Sean have a studio visit to talk about, and Romy, Ron, and Maki helped me with all this production and everything put together in 2 weeks. Really, thanks a lot. Yeah. And thanks for coming.